This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor Jon Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
So, you want to be retired for a good, long, happy 20, 30, 40 years? It's going to cost you. And
it's so true. It's so true. It's like, of all the things that people cite that could be problems for retirement, the biggest one is longevity. Because the longer we live, the more that market crashes could happen. Tax rates could change. We have war, we have famine, we have plagues, we have whatever, right? All those doom and gloom sayers. It's like, but the longer we live, the more chances that all those other things can affect us. So
roofs
it ends up being
need to be replaced. Transmissions die. It's a real thing. And the further we go on as a society, John, the more longevity becomes an issue. I mean, we are living longer. We are taking better care of ourselves. Somebody said, I can't remember where it was, but I saw something where somebody was talking about how the expectation, the life expectation is going to quickly jump to well into the 100s over the course of the next few years because of AI technology and medication technology and the stem cell research.
So they had a hot mic, not broadcast, but they had a hot mic between Putin and Xi from China. And what they were talking about is living to 150 years old. No joke. Both of those leaders were talking about how they could potentially live to 150 because they just need organ transplants. Organ transplants because of all the stuff you just cited, the AI technology, the ability to do all kinds of recitation things, hyperbaric chambers and all this stuff can keep you younger forever. But then just with organ transplants, with stem cells and all this stuff, Xi and Putin were talking about potentially living to 150. Now, those guys know some stuff that we don't know. And so if they're already talking about that, that means that the possibility is probably pretty high that someone thinks they can do that, at least in a lifetime, right? That's crazy talk.
Well, the information that you do have, Sir Jon Hicks, not that you've been knighted. But
I was going to say, I don't recall being knighted.
I'll give you that brand
recently.
today, Mr. Jon Hicks. The information about how we make our money work for us during these years, because a writer at GoBankingRates.com was doing a little experiment playing around with AI. The writer asked ChatGPT, hey, if I make $60,000 today, how much am I going to need 20 years from now for the same lifestyle? And the quick answer, ChatGPT said, you're going to need $108,000. So, John, let's do the math. Everything is going to go up in 20 years by 80%, according to this quick exchange. If you do the research, the cost of butter, eggs, and a Ford F-150 back in 2005, you do the math on that, that 80% increase, it tracks, John. Meanwhile, people are suspect because a new study by Nationwide found that thanks to inflation, many older workers and retirees are skeptical of traditional withdrawal rules of thumb. Think the 4% rule, 100 minus your age rule. And so we're starting to think that these kinds of rules may no longer apply to our reality. How in the heck do we do this then? How do we figure out a withdrawal rate to factor in inflation and longevity so that we have money when we're older?
Yeah, so think about what the big issue here is at hand, right? We're living longer, so we're trying to figure out how much of my money can I actually pull out and live off of without running out. Right? I mean, in study after study, and in all these questionings to all Americans, that's what everyone keeps saying. How am I going to make sure I don't run out of money? Because it's difficult, right? Because we are living so much longer. Originally, they said the 4% rule would be fine, which is the amount you start retiring on. You take up 4% and you adjust that for inflation each year. And what they're finding is when all this was done in the early 1990s, we weren't living as long. And now we are. And you got Putin and Xi talking about living to 150. Now, what is their withdrawal rate going to be? Maybe negative. It's hard to know. But of course, if they just keep taking everyone else's money, then it's all fine no matter what, right? They'll be fine. But for the rest of us, how do we figure out how much we can withdraw? Well, to me, it really has a lot less to do with withdrawal rates, and it has to do with behavior, how we behave. Believe it or not, market crashes are not the biggest enemy in retirement. It's our behavior when markets do whatever, or when interest rates do whatever, or whatever happens around us. And the way to eliminate that is not to focus on a withdrawal rate, is to focus on how can we be certain that we have a bucket of money that's only goal, its only job is to give us income for a living, right? That's what it really comes down to. And back in the day, they called this a pension.
Right.
I know, it's like an ancient dinosaur, like a triceratops.
What is this pension you speak of? Tell us more.
I think that the new generations are really soft. And the truth is they want pensions back. They don't want to work forever. They don't want to have to figure it out. They want someone to force and hand it to them. And they want to be fed these things. Well, frankly, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
I would love to have that.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't love to have a pension? That is the closest thing to what we have in the United States is Social Security, right? Except we paid into that sucker. And we're going to potentially pay in forever, and we'll see how much we get back in the end.
Right.
But again, let's go back to the original thing at hand. When it comes down to withdrawal rates, I think that that's an archaic design that is doomed to fail because you're always going to wonder, are these assumptions going to hold up during this 10 years or specifically during your retirement period? Okay. Because if you retire, let's say, Heather, at 62 and you live to be 95, that is 33 years that you need that money to last and grow. So amazingly, if you do that same math that we looked at earlier about what a Ford F-150 cost or what butter cost and things like that, if you go forward and expect that we're going to have just a 3% inflation rate, and in order for us to live, we need the inflation rate plus, let's say, 3 or 4%. Guys, that $100,000 that we need now to live off of will be over $224,000 at that point in time in our 90s. Yeah. That is crazy sauce if you think about it like that. And yet, history shows us and the statistics show us it is potentially very accurate. And that's with a lower inflation rate than we've seen in the last several years, right? And if you look at the cost of medication drugs, you look at the cost of food, you look at the cost of housing, you look at the cost of gasoline, most all of those things have inflated substantially higher. And those are the things that most retirees are worried about. Those have inflated higher than standard inflation. So when you think about these things, our behavior is going to dictate it all. In our office, this is why we specifically utilize a system that we just call elegant simplicity. It's simple. It's 3 buckets. But by bucketing our money so that we know what do we need if things go right or wrong for the next 1 or 2 years, okay? Well, your comfort level will then dictate how much you put in that, but at least 1 to 2 years worth of income. Now we're good for 2 years. This middle bucket is the most important part because that middle bucket is the money that we need to create an income for us. Whether you own Airbnbs, you own rental properties, you own strip malls, you own equities, you own dividend paying things, you own annuities, you own insured contracts, you own whatever, doesn't matter. We need that to produce a spendable income for us. That's number one. Okay. The second thing we need it to do is to not lose money. When everyone talks about the Warren Buffett rules of investing, rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Right?
Yes.
And I agree with that in this, what we call the middle bucket, the income-based bucket. This is the one place that I think annuities, as much as they're given positive praise or they're demonized, this is the one place that if it's a proper fit, it could work. Now, there are hundreds, if not thousands of other investments that fit in this bucket. But the main thing is, number 1, it has to produce income. And number 2, it can't lose our principal. Okay. But everything else goes in that third bucket. Now, when you look at something that can't lose principal, and let's just use current interest rates or even lower rent interest rates. If you just make 2% on that middle bucket and you pull out 6% a year, your money magically lasts for at least 25 years. Now, that is one of the most interesting things when you look at simple math, and that's why I like the elegant simplicity. We can go back and figure out a 6% withdrawal rate for our client, figure out what amount of money we need in that middle bucket, and what does that do? Frees up the entire rest of the portfolio to be invested in anything they want, whether it's AI technology companies or cryptocurrency or whatever. None of that matters to us. The main thing is we want their plan to work, and to stay retired is what everyone's freaking out about. How much can I withdraw? Let's don't think about how much you can withdraw. Let's establish a framework to know your income from day one until the day you kick off. Knowing that is tremendously important. Then what is that growth bucket built to do? That third bucket? To keep up with inflation. So we know our income is going to be satisfied, and we leave inflation to a different element. That is the easiest way to do it. And by the way, the chances of failure when we use a properly structured bucket plan are less than 2%. If you look at the normal 60-40 rules of you invest 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds and only pull out 4%, there is a tremendous chance to actually run out of money, much more than 15% in the long run. So we want people to not focus on the things that give us that much chance of failure. We want to focus on single digits, preferably less than 5% chance of running out of money. That would be failure, right? So if we do it correctly, we don't have to worry about those general rules of thumb, because psychology is what's going to destroy us 10 times over whatever the market would actually throw at us.
RetirementSolutionShow.com is our website, and where to go to start the conversation with Jon and his team about figuring out a withdrawal strategy on your money in the years ahead. We also have links posted in the show notes, or again, it's retirementsolutionradio.com. I was thinking about how you were talking about bucketing strategies and figuring out what our withdrawal is going to be. Because for a lot of people in a lot of circumstances, they might hear, oh my goodness, all these extra years, I'm going to have to save more. I have to work longer. I have to work harder. But what you're saying, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, with proper strategy, it's just about moving some of the furniture around in the room to create the
That's
income.
literally it.
Yeah.
Most people do not need to go to IKEA and get an entire new suite of furniture. All they need to do is to effectively position all of the furniture where it fits in the space comfortably at each phase of our lives. Most people think, oh, I got to get all different products and all different investments. Very rarely. All you need to do is to make sure that you've designed it to where you're comfortable for that room. That's all it really boils down to. And the good thing is that if we're being really smart when it comes to withdrawing money, the tax benefit that we get from a strategic tax strategy offsets a lot of the issues that people run into when it comes to withdrawal strategies. By doing proper tax planning along the way as part of an integrated part of retirement planning, we offset a lot of that inflation to begin with. That is the real ticket to winning.
I think also this is all boiled down to diversification just takes on a different meaning in retirement.
Without question.
Yeah.
So we don't just want to diversify our assets. We want to diversify asset location and timing elements of when we pull those assets out. Those make huge differences in the long run. AI is helping us figure some of these things out. No joke. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a properly structured plan in the front end where we've already had these conversations.
If you are wondering about diversification for retirement, you're smart, you worked hard, you have done proper diversification in your growth years, but it takes on a whole new meaning, and figuring out a withdrawal strategy that's going to work for you with tax strategies and taking the emotion out of it. It does. It feels like a lot. You don't have to figure it out by yourself at J. Hagan Capital. We're here to help. So let's start that conversation. RetirementSolutionShow.com is where to go to start the conversation with Jon and his team at J. Hagan Capital. We also have links posted in the show notes. So you can just click there, head to our website, which is, again, RetirementSolutionShow.com.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with Jon Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with Jon and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting RetirementSolutionRadio.com. Be sure to listen to Jon's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 1882794.